In today's DIY, you will need 3 mason jars, 3 pieces of fabric, Mod Podge, some floral of your choice, a pair of scissors, and I think that's it. So let's get started. So first, what you want to do is you want to take the lid off of that mason jar, and you want to take your piece of fabric and you kind of want to measure how much fabric you will need to cover the length of the mason jar. But we're not necessarily concerned about the width at this point in time, but you do want to know how much you'll need to cover the length of the jar. And basically that's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to figure out, okay, how much do I need to cover the full length of the jar? Now, if you guys know me well enough in my DIYs, you know that I cannot stand having to measure. So generally what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball it. And for this DIY, eyeballing it is perfectly fine. And you want to measure from the mouth of the jar all the way to the base. And that's just basically what I'm doing here. And once you figure out about how much fabric you will need for that, I'm just going to cut it at that point, so I will know exactly how much I need. So I'm just going to cut straight across from that fabric. And again, it's a forgiving project, so it's okay if the fabric is a little crooked, if you cut it not as precise as you want it to be. All of that is going to work out just fine. So fret not, it is completely okay. And that's all I'm doing here. I'm just going to cut it. And then what you guys will see me do is I will take that fabric and then I'm going to cut it in strips. And I guess they're about 1/2-inch strips. Again, you guys know I don't measure. So I believe it's about 1/2-inch strips that I'm going to cut 8 of them per jar. And I didn't know exactly how many strips I needed. I kind of eyeballed it. I figured 8 strips would be more than enough to cover an entire jar. And there you go. And I'm going to do that 7 more times for each fabric. Now, you guys know that I live in the South. I've been here for over 16 years, and it would not be a spring DIY series if I did not do a mason jar DIY. We love our mason jars in the South. We drink sweet tea, lemonade, and everything else from a mason jar, and then we also love doing DIYs with them. We have never met a mason jar we didn't love here in the South. So here are all 3 strips, and I have done, again, 8 strips for each fabric. Okay, and as you guys can see, they're not perfect strips, but they will work absolutely fine. Okay, so now I'm going to take that Mod Podge, and I have an old bowl that we weren't doing anything with, so I went on ahead and I grabbed that old bowl. And what I'm going to do is I am going to place that Mod Podge in the bowl, because you're going to be using quite a bit of it, so you want to make sure that it is easily accessible and that you don't have to dig too much or work too hard to get to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that strip of fabric with the right side facing up, and I'm going to cover it in Mod Podge. Now, for those of you who have not worked with Mod Podge very much, it's like it smells like Elmer's glue. It puts you in the mind of Elmer's glue. But the great thing about this one is that it dries completely clear. And that's what I love so much about it, because it's fairly easy to work with. It can get very messy. So let me warn you that this is a very messy DIY. So If you just got you a fresh manicure and you don't want to get glue all over, I do recommend that you wear gloves during this DIY. I should have taken my own advice because I did get glue like everywhere, even on my freshly manicured nails. So wear gloves. That will definitely be my tip. I was able to get some gloves, some disposable gloves from the Dollar Tree. It was about 20 pair in there for $1. And here, guys, I am just working that fabric into that jar. And if I can, and I'm sorry that's not in frame, but it was so hard for me to keep it in frame and be able to smooth it out. But if you think about wallpaper and how you smooth out wallpaper, or if you've ever seen anyone apply wallpaper and how they kind of smooth it as they go along, that's what I'm doing with the fabric. I'm just getting it inside of that jar and I'm just kind of smoothing it to making sure that there are no air bubbles or air pockets anywhere in sight. Okay, and so this is what the first jar looks like when it's done. As you guys can see, it's white, it's cloudy, it's all of that stuff, but we won't worry about that because we know that it's not going to dry that way. Okay, and then I just go ahead and I start on the second fabric and the second jar, doing it the exact same way, except I wised up, girlfriend, honey, and I got me some gloves. Because ain't nobody spending $35 for no manicure, honey, only to get it all messed up. So I'm just doing the exact same thing for that second fabric. And hopefully it can give you guys a better view of how I place it inside the jar. And if you guys have small children who would love to get in on this project, they will probably love it because you get nice and messy. And I know that children love doing that. So this is a great family project. And again, you're just going to slide it in the mouth of that jar. You can use a small mason jar. You can use a large one. The sky's the limit. I use the smaller ones because those were the ones that were at my Dollar Tree. But I know places like Walmart, Target, and places like that, they have the larger jars. So if you want to do a larger mason jar, you can absolutely do that. And again, I'm smoothing, I'm working it as best I can, all the way to the bottom of the jar. And I tried to find a bright and happy little floral pattern for these, and here is what they look like once I got done with all three of them prior to them drying. And you want to overlap the fabric, okay? And as you see, when you look inside the jar, you can kind of see how I overlapped it. You want it to overlap. This is what you want because you want it to have the appearance of a seamless, you want the fabric to appear to be seamless. Okay, so as you can see inside, I've overlapped the fabric. And when it dries, it should just look like one big piece of fabric on the inside of that jar. But I was saying I was just trying to pick a cheerful spring-like fabric. And here is what they look like when they are dry. And guys, let me tell you, it took a full day for these to dry, almost a day and a half. So make sure that you plan for that if you want to do this DIY series. Because even here, I still had little spots that weren't completely dry. It took a while. So, you know, just be mindful of that and plan a full day, or if not a day and a half, for them to dry. And here's the finished product, you guys. I really love the way they turned out. I think they are bright. I think they scream spring. I just filled them with some white roses. I wanted the floral to be very simple since the pattern and the fabric is bright all by itself. I just kind of wanted a very simple floral, but you can do absolutely any flower you choose. Hydrangeas, peonies, roses, you name it. And I really loved it. I hope you guys love how it turned out and that you have enjoyed my DIY series. I am so grateful for you guys tuning in every day to see what I have been up to. Of course, I have a spring home tour coming up. I hope you will join me for that, and subscribe if you haven't already. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.